Welcome to Status Check with Spivey, where we talk about life, law school admissions, a little bit of everything. Today, I am lucky and fortunate to be joined by someone who not only did I admit 20 years ago, but we became friends and we've been friends ever since. And I also admire. Justin Ishbia was the last person taken off our wait list. And there's so many things in this podcast, this interview, that I think are reflective of what can help anyone in any cycle, which is Justin had a plan. He had a 4.0 GPA. He wanted to go to Harvard, Stanford. He got his LSAT back. He scored in the mid 150s. So he applied to more schools. He adjusted his plan. Mid 150s was well below our median at the time at Vanderbilt. So he visited. He made a strategic decision to visit. We don't talk about this strategic part as far as navigating admissions enough in the podcast. But research after research shows that if you have something in common with someone, whether it's job hiring or admissions, whatever, that commonality can really win the day for you, which is why we always tell people to have an interest section on your resume. It's why we always tell people to visit. You never know if your love of ballet or fencing or whatever it may be, maybe the thing that is the inflection point that drives that waitlist admit decision. With Justin, it was we connected, but he also stayed in touch the right way. He didn't make up reasons out of the blue, but when he had a good organic reason, he would give me a call. He called me as his furniture, luggage, everything, clothes were being shipped to Emory, an apartment he had leased by Emory Law School, and we had room. I pulled his file, and the very next day, I called him and admitted him. So this is a wonderful story. I think there's a lot of great long sort of haul admissions advice in here. If you don't get an early admit, how to do things over the long haul. I have thousands of stories in my 20 plus years doing this of people like Justin who don't get into their dream school, who have killed it in their careers. But last week, again, Justin was the last person we took off our wait list. Last week, he gave Vanderbilt Law School $10 million. So this story is special to me, and I hope you too. I have the great fortune to be joined with a close friend, someone who I admitted to Vanderbilt Law School about 20 years ago, Justin Ishbia. Justin, I think you have an interesting story about how you were admitted and how you found out. Do you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, great to talk to you again, Mike. It's been a little while since we had caught up, but I loved my time at Vanderbilt Law School, and I think how I got there was not the traditional path, I would say. So I applied to a bunch of law schools. This is back in 2001. So it was a different world a little bit back then, but I literally applied to 15 law schools. I applied even before I got my first LSAT score back. And then the first LSAT score back, I was pretty disappointed. I was probably about 10, 12 points below than what I was practicing at. And so when I had aspirations for, maybe going to a top 5 school based on my grades and other extracurricular activities, I felt like after the first test, it was unlikely to end up at a top 5 school. And then I kind of recalibrated and I figured out where was the place that I wanted to go. And I ended up going down to Nashville. My younger brother played college basketball and he had an NCAA tournament game in Memphis. So I flew down to Nashville in March and I asked the admissions office, I was on the wait list. I asked the admissions office if I could meet with somebody there. I was in town. I flew to Nashville. I was driving to Memphis because it was cheaper to go there than supposed to drive to Memphis. And so my dad came along with me and we went and I got the fortune of meeting Mike Spivey. Mike Spivey was an admissions officer at the time, and I sat down in his office and I told him about my background. And Mike, I remember taking me for a walk through the campus, which was beautiful. And the building was under construction. It was being a new law school building. It was like about halfway done from being revitalized from when I was there.
My office was a closet back then because right.
It was a closet. That's why we sat there for a few minutes. He said, let's go walk through the campus. And so we walked. Mike, as you may know, is a former excellent baseball player, and I was a baseball player as well back in my youth. And we bonded over that over a long conversation. And I remember leaving that conversation and walking through that campus and saying, after recalibrating, this is my top choice. If I could go anywhere, this is where I wanted to go. And my LSAT score didn't warrant it. Not at that point in time, as far as the kind of 25, 75 median. So stayed in touch. So that was in March. Over the rest of the school year, I stayed in touch. I touched base with Mike, every 6 weeks, kind of maybe a note to follow up on something good but meritorious that happened. I finished the semester. I finished the semester with 4.0. I got all A's, and I let him know that, I think, around May when grades came out. And then I took the CPA exam. I was an accounting major. in August, I'd already decided I was going to Emory. So I'd already put my deposit down in Emory. I already flown to Atlanta. I had signed a lease on an apartment. I had actually packed up all my belongings, put it into a moving company, and it had already been shipped down to Atlanta. I let Mike know about a week before that if you were to submit me, just so you know, off the wait list, I would 100% be coming. I knew it was still a long shot. And I also found out that week that I had passed the CPA exam, the whole entire exam in one try. And I said, just so you know, this is a new fact. I don't know if it matters at all, but I told him I passed. And so that was a bit of my journey. And then randomly I was actually lunch with my father, and Mike had called my mom. My mom was at my parents' house. My phone, back then there were no cell phones, or there were very few cell phones. My home, like where I grew up, Mike had called my campus phone number, which already been disconnected. He's already left campus. Called my parents' home, and she talked to my mom. And I called my dad and said, get Justin on the phone. And when Mike told me I was accepted, the answer was yes. And so that was my journey. And I think Mike had told me that I was literally the last person admitted off the wait list that year. And the next day I flew to Nashville. I turned in my lease in Atlanta. I had to pay a little bit of a fine there and asked the moving truck to move my stuff to Nashville, and never looked back. And it was the best decision I ever made.
First, I'm going to guess one thing, then I'm going to unpack from an admissions angle, since the vast majority of our listeners are applying to law school, sort of my side of that story. I'm going to guess that because a lot of people start at, I can think of a client of mine who started at Michigan Law and then got a phone call from Stanford Law, and they admitted him, and he just packed up his stuff in the car and drove from Michigan to Stanford. I remember it was a tough decision. I'm going to guess that client, and I'm going to guess you have like zero memory of driving to Emory or breaking the lease. That's like a week in the life that's just like a non-issue.
It was a non-issue at all. I mean, I remember when I got the phone call, I was literally at lunch with my father, and we drove home there to talk to my mom about it. And the drive home, my dad's a lawyer. He still is a lawyer, 73 years old, still is a lawyer. And he said, we weighed the pros and cons of it. And after about 15, 20-minute conversation, it became clear to me, go to your school you want to go to. Like, we can undo a lease. I had to pay a 1-month termination fee. And it was a no-brainer. I decided long ago that was my first choice. So even though it was late in the cycle and it was uncomfortable to make some changes, I mean, it's a 3-year time period. I made awesome friends and a career that I went to Vanderbilt as a place where I learned and studied versus an inconvenience of a week of making some changes. And it was no-brainer looking back on it.
Yeah, exactly. So as from an admissions perspective, this is how I take what you just said. I remember you came with your dad, which is totally fine, by the way. I mean, a lot, just for people listening, a lot of people do that. Don't bring your parents to orientation week, but you're more than welcome to bring, that happens too, Justin, but you're more than welcome to bring them to any visit. Of course, you're in your early 20s. I was in my probably mid to late, I think we have a 5 years age difference.
Yep,
so you were probably what, 22, and I was
23, 22, 23.
This is 20 years ago, but I remember pretty well. I remember one thing that you said that stuck with me was your dad was like, I can't wait for Justin to become a lawyer to work at my firm. And you were like, no way, Dad. I want to do my thing. You can say that. It could sound fake or it can sound real. Yeah. And the way you said it was very real.
I mean, it's totally true. I mean, I love my father. He always wanted me to work with him. He still wants me to work with him to this day. But I knew that I would end up going to Kirkland Ellis. I wanted to go to a national law firm where I would learn from others. If I ever wanted to go back with my dad, I probably could. But to me, I felt like I had to go work somewhere else first for a minimum of X years. Yeah,
you said that. You actually said that. If it didn't work out at a law firm, you could.
Yeah.
You did that on your visit. Our COO, who we chit-chatted with before we started recording, her father's 78, and I think he still wants her to work at his firm too. So we can relate. So you had a 4.0 GPA, I remember, throughout college.
That's right.
And you played baseball at Michigan State.
I got hurt, never played in a game, but I was.
Okay, but so you went there to play baseball. So we did very much connect over baseball. We both had similar baseball backgrounds. And you were a bouncer, right?
I worked at that time, one of the more popular bars on campus. And I was at the door and checked IDs. It was a great college job.
And then the final thing is you stayed in touch at core inflection points. All that stuff is what got you admitted. You had a likable, sincere personality. I mean, you were 5 to 10 points. I know you took the LSAT twice. So
from your median, the first test, probably 10 points below. The second test, 5 or 6 points below your median.
Yeah, okay. So, that obviously, generally, you don't admit someone like that because what the typical applicant doesn't know, you probably didn't know this at the time, we probably had 800 people 1 point below our LSAT on the wait list. And you would normally go to that group first. You wouldn't go to a different file drawer. Back then, there were files and file drawers. So but you had a likable personality and a very authentic, sincere personality. I could tell that you were sort of hard work, hard play. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, like I grew up playing sports in high school, played football, baseball, basketball. Sports was my DNA. I worked in college at a college bar, played also intramural sports in college, but I grew up playing at a higher level. And I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a successful lawyer, and I eventually wanted to go off the business after that. And I think I said all that to you. Like I had a plan of what I wanted to do, and I bonded with you personally. I think had I met somebody else in Mission's office at a different disposition, it may have been a different story. That's the honest part of it, I think.
Right. You could have been an Emory.
Right.
But that's the thing. You developed a relationship. So many people try to put together a great application and launch those applications, but that's like the first fifth of the cycle. There's 4/5 to go. And a lot of that is interviewing. No one did that back then, but now schools interview, but developing relationships. I have this analogy, Justin, I got to come up with a better one. It's a metaphor. You're this like revolutionary warship, and there's another ship across from you, but it's 500 yards away and you only have 8 cannonballs. You don't launch all 8 cannonballs. You launch one, which is maybe your application, and then you wait for it to get closer, and then you retake the LSAT. That's your second cannonball.
Right.
Don't use all 8 cannonballs. So you spaced it out.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I was trying to be strategic back then, but I don't think I had the right experience to even do so. But philosophically, it's like build a relationship, going on campus and being there in person. That was important to me. After I met you, I went back one more time. And then for me, it was also important to have meaningful reasons to drip on you. I didn't want to call you and say, hey, how are you? What's up? There's 3 or 4 touch points probably from March until August. I know for sure one of them I passed the LSAT. The other ones I got my final grades back for the end of the year, and I got all A's. So I could say, hey, 4 years in college, I never got anything but an A. I thought that was a meaningful, there may have been other guys at 3.9, 3.7, or 3.8, which are great from better schools down to Michigan State. Probably better schools than Michigan State academically, but it does say something about discipline and process when you can say, I worked in college, played sports for a little bit in some capacity, and I never got anything below an A. I wanted to meet that communication. Then as a accounting major, I took the CPA exam. I took it in May, got my results in early August. And having that part of the story also, I was trying to build up multiple touch points that say, this guy works hard, he's disciplined, and he's being thoughtful about follow-up.
Yeah, you had a strategy that was organic. You weren't making up reasons. So a lot of people in the application process, they reach out to admissions to make themselves feel better. Like, oh, if I get an email back from admissions, they'll calm me down for a couple of weeks. You weren't doing that. You were reaching out with value-added touch points.
People look at U.S. News World Report, for better or for worse. Now, on the other side of it, being a lawyer and practicing law, that's not how I look at it personally.
Right.
In my mind, there's tiers and buckets, but I would rather you pick your school based on a geography you feel like it's a good fit. And by the way, Vanderbilt was so awesome for this, is that when I was in law school there, my colleagues and peers, the best and brightest in my class, some wanted to go to Atlanta, some wanted to go to DC, some wanted to go to New York, some wanted to go to Chicago, some wanted to go wherever. So when we were in school, it was a different dynamic. But on the way in, I just knew that there was a median dynamic too. And I knew if I have a reason to be somebody that when the wait list came and there was 7 names they're picking from, and maybe the first 4 they called were already happy with what they were going with, they would call me and I wouldn't change the overall numbers. And therefore I thought I could maybe bring up the median on the GPA because it couldn't get higher than my GPA. And maybe it would be non-impactful on the lower end of the LSAT. So that could make the class stronger. And I had hopefully a personality and other sort of, I would say, ancillary factors that could be a positive for the class.
So you were the last person we admitted that year. And that's not a secret thing that Vanderbilt gets to do. Every law school gets to admit some people towards the late. You were admitted in August of 2001. But every law school has, if you have a 20-point cushion a week before orientation, you can admit, depending on your enrollment targets, 10, 15 people below your median LSAT. Let me just be frank. If it was mean, not median, you probably wouldn't have been admitted. I wouldn't have had the ability to pester my boss. Hey, admit this guy, admit this guy. I think the last week I was saying that every day. If it was mean, we would have gone to the 163 bucket or whatever. Right. So hopefully it'll stay medians. And then people always have a chance.
I loved my experience. I could not have a better experience in law school. I was down the path of a Vanderbilt commercial, but I should be a Vanderbilt commercial. I loved my time there. The friends I've met there were the best. It's the people, and they part was luck. The guys and gals that are in my class jived. We jived as a group. We played extracurricular sports. I just had a great class. And after first year, some of my friends, actually, one girl I was friends with, transferred actually to UVA. I had good grades first year. I ended up with strong grades. And I could transfer, but I said, I love my experience here. Actually, I talked to people in the career service office. I said, if I end up in a top 10% of this class, we'll have a good chance of getting to, I want to go back north. I'm from Detroit. I wound up in Chicago or New York. I love Nashville, and our firm has an office in Nashville now, so I love it down there a whole bunch. But I wanted to get back because I felt like I wanted to do probably more on the investing side than just being a lawyer. And I asked them, they said, would I be able to get a job in New York or Chicago at a large law firm if I stay here and get good grades? They're like, yes. Last year, we had X number of people who went to New York and to Chicago at firms like Skadden Arps, Kirkland and Ellis, Mayer Brown, Simpson Thacher. And I was like, well, why am I going to transfer that? I'm loving my time here. It's a different part of the country that is I probably won't live in for a long term, but great experience. I've got great friends and I know the ropes. I'm staying put, and I loved it. And I thought about transferring for a half day, maybe. Then I was like, no, like I got this. Let's keep doing what we're doing. I love my experience and wasn't on my mind.
Yeah, well, the law school is grateful that you didn't transfer. I'm grateful. I'm grateful that your class was awesome. You put me on your softball team.
That's
so
true.
I got to be part of that. We won. We won. We beat all the other schools.
When we were in law school, we played these flag football teams, we played basketball, softball. Softball was the most memorable part of it. We played multiple games, and like those co-ed teams, and there was just men's leagues as well. And some of the guys in our team that want to play in the weather and stuff, and Mike joined the team as a faculty member. And I remember the law school team won the graduate school division, and then we ended up playing against the undergrad division. Some fraternity won, and for us, it was one of those. When you're out of college, there's no more big moments in sports ever again. I remember clearly it was a Thursday night, and it was like before everyone's going out to bar review, which Vanderbilt was a thing. Everyone goes to a certain bar on a Thursday night. At least we did. Mike was on the team, and we beat the undergrad team like 4-3 to win like the all-school softball championship in 2001, which felt like a big moment back in 2001. But looking back on it, it still was a big moment. It was fun. We had a great time.
Those undergrad kids probably couldn't believe it.
They were cocky, and we had fun. And then we went out for drinks after, and it was. All I can tell you is the atmosphere and the experience. And when I think back about law school right now, I don't think about the class I took or the notes I took or all the hard work or that sort of. I think about the people. And Mike was part of my journey. He was a friend, and he was part of the staff and faculty. But he was a friend. And the friends I made there are still my best friends this day. My buddies and I this day still go to once a year, like 10 guys go to a big college football rivalry game. We go into Alabama, Auburn. We've been to Army, Navy, Stanford, Cal, Michigan, Michigan State. We go to all these big games across the country. And the bonds were formed in these years by playing on these sports teams in class and also going to class together, studying together. And I think the collegiality was unique because none of us wanted to go to the same place. I wanted to go to Chicago or New York. One of my best friends, Dan, wanted to go out west to Phoenix. My other great friends, Mike wanted to go to Cincinnati. Nick wanted to go to Atlanta. Mike and other guys want to go to Atlanta. So there's collegiality, and we helped each other with notes. We helped each other with stuff in class because we weren't interviewing for the same jobs when the time came.
So you were not at a top 14 law school. Dan, you referenced, he's a general counsel of one of the larger
public companies.
Jamie McKelp was in your class, right?
Yes.
She did the best. She's working for Spivey Consulting now. Her career took off the highest.
She's really smart, that's for sure. She's one of my favorite people also.
Yeah, me too. So I just want to click on the fact that, yeah, Vanderbilt wasn't your first choice. Like you wanted to go to Harvard and Stanford, but your career has taken off. You are now the managing partner and founder of a private equity firm.
That's right. So my background, after law school, I went to Kirkland and Ellis and went to go work in their private equity group. So the offers I was choosing from was between Simpson Thacher and Kirkland and Ellis. I knew I wanted to do private equity. And in my view, at least 2001, my view, and probably still today, those are two of the best private equity focused law firms in the country. And one was New York, one was Chicago. And I debated where I was going to go. And I talked to my dad, talked to some friends, and I got some good advice from some mentors. They said, Justin, where do you want to end up? And I said, I want to end up in the Midwest, most likely. They said, go start your career there and then figure out from there. So I went to Kirkland Ellis, was in a private equity group. I was there for about 3 or 4 years, went to go work to one of our clients at Kirkland Ellis, went there for a few years with another private equity firm for 2 or 3 years. And I founded Short Capital in 2009. And we focused on investing in the microcap, which we define as businesses less than 100 million of revenue. Today, we have about $2.5 billion under management. Our investors are mostly university endowments. We own 25 portfolio companies across the country. We have over 20,000 employees in our firm network, all of our portfolio companies. And we have an office in Chicago and an office in Nashville. And I love what I do every single day. And I'll work to the day I die.
You and me both. I think that's become a big trend, right, for universities to invest their endowments and private equity.
Yeah. I mean, even recent news come out that Vanderbilt had done an awesome job with their endowment. I know Anders Hall runs Vanderbilt's endowment. He left Duke and came to run it for Vanderbilt, done an awesome job. I just saw some information that Vanderbilt was the second highest performing endowment in the country for the last 12 months, whatever it was. It was the news today, actually, Harvard, 34%, they had like a $10 billion gain. So they had a lot of money. You don't need the money today. They're investing it. Usually endowments spend 5% of their money to build buildings or scholarships, and the rest is used to keep reinvesting. And it was a great year. And so there's a lot more investment in the private equity community because if they don't need the money tomorrow, returns can be more compelling than the public market. So I went to a law firm, went to private equity firm, started my own firm, and we've been growing and adding people to our organization.
Yeah. And you're on Vanderbilt's, are you on the law school board and the university board? Is that right?
Correct. Yep. I was on the law school board first. I think I've done that now for 6 or 7 years. The law school is an advisory board. I don't think it's legally binding. Our dean is Dean Chris Guthrie, who was a professor when I was there, and he had a negotiations class, and I clicked and bonded. And so 6 or 7 years ago, he asked me to join the advisory board of the law school, which has been a great experience. But a lot of other talented Vanderbilt Law alumni. Just this year in July, I was invited to join the Vanderbilt Board of Trust, which is the main board of decision-making and governing body of Vanderbilt University. And so I've been on that board now for about 3 or 4 months.
Okay, 3 or 4 months. So congrats. That's a huge deal. I'm curious why we can't. Can you just get us a good football coach? Can I slip you a napkin? Like, let me tell a Justin Ishbia story. There was like a 10-year period of my life where I'd be on a flight to Chicago and I would get a text from you. Hey, Spivey, I heard through the grapevine you're going to be, it wouldn't even have to be Chicago. I think it was Ann Arbor once. You're like, can I take you to dinner?
Yeah. I keep tabs on my friends. I keep tabs. I get texts people are going and stuff, but I'm a huge sports fan. And so Vanderbilt, I think, has a great coach right now. And I think Clark will have a chance to build something special. Football is harder than basketball because you need to have, dozens of great athletes. Basketball, you can get 2 or 3 and can change the game. But there's no better place than Nashville. And I think Nashville is a growing community, and I think great people want to spend time there. And so I have no doubts those are the options. We'll choose Vanderbilt.
So Chris Guthrie is a friend of mine too. He's someone who he would probably say, yeah, Mike calls me every once in a while panicked about something, and he calms me down and gives me good advice. You just gave the law school, I think it was last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, but I think it was last week, $10 million.
That's right.
You didn't fire a neuron and write a check, right? That's a mindful thought.
I'm an investor by profession, and I've been fortunate, and some of our businesses have some great outcomes. And then when you think about philanthropy, I was raised by my mom and dad. My mom was a teacher. She's retired. She's 72, and she's taught for 25, 27 years in public schools in Pontiac, which is a relatively socioeconomic challenged community, I would say. And she retired about a decade ago. My dad's a lawyer, and they instilled up on me when I was a young age, like education is the key to success. Education gives you ability to grow, freedom. And Vanderbilt gave me that opportunity. But for Vanderbilt, there's no way I'd have got a job at Kirkland Ellis. There's no way I'd have learned private equity. There's no way I'd have made returns on investors the way we have today. So I learned so much from Vanderbilt. I think of all these causes that have merit. I go to who is the best leader that I'm in touch with, and I'm backing that leader. And Chris Guthrie, dean of the law school there, is, I believe, one of the best leaders. And that's why I decided to donate money to Vanderbilt Law School, because the impact it made on my life, it changed my trajectory. And if I can hopefully create some programs and opportunities for other students in the future that can have a similar trajectory, I think have a multiplier effect. So that's why I did it.
Our firm invests in WWF, the World Wildlife Foundation, not the wrestlers. Although if I had more money, I would probably invest in those dudes too. But that's no better or worse than education. I heard Warren Buffett once say he doesn't buy companies, he invests in companies with strong management. And it sounds like that's sort of the approach you took.
That's exactly right. I'm involved with other charities as well. I don't donate money to places where I don't believe in leadership, period. If I believe in the leadership, this is about how much do you believe in this than somebody else. And I can tell you what Chris has done at that law school is tremendous. And I started talking about this. I had an idea I'd like to donate. And he said, here's what I would love to be able to do with this law school if I had X dollars more. And I said, I believe in your mission. I believe that I can help you get there. They're building a new wing there, and it's a career services office. And part of my whole story was I came in the last in the class and I left not last in the class. And I felt like there'd be other people like me. I have the scholarship that I donated to Vanderbilt, and my mandate is for non-traditional individuals, those with not the top LSAT scores. I want to give the individual the chance to go to law school at Vanderbilt for those who were not the 170 LSAT and the 4.0. Former athletes, I believe some great leaders, they come from the military, come from sports, other sort of background. I believe those individuals make a difference in our society, and I want to support those individuals.
We have had thousands of clients just as a consulting firm. I've seen 60 to 80,000 applicants. There are thousands of stories like yours. Now, yours is kind of interesting because you were the last person admitted and you gave $10 million to your law school. To me, that's just, I want to write a book about it or something. But there are thousands of people that get it every year, that get admitted off the wait list, that graduate top 10%, who go on to do amazing things that I will never be able to do with my career. But I was lucky enough at one point in my life to be able to say, I'm really pulling for this kid. And she may have come from the arts and just, had a passion for theater or something. So many different backgrounds. And that's what gets you admitted, because you add a different voice to the class. And you did too.
And I feel like, you guys know I'm a big sports fan. And in sports, take baseball, the playoffs going right now. You play 162 games to get into the playoffs. And that's like your first call it 22 years in life. You have 22 years to do different things to get into the playoffs. Then once you get in the playoffs, which is like getting into law school, the score resets. No one cares your LSAT anymore. No one cares about your grades from undergrad. It just doesn't matter anymore. Law firms will judge to hire you or not based upon the last school you attend, which is your law school, and how you perform there. So, I mean, look, if you have like a 1.2 from, a random school, the law firm may say, why'd you do so bad in undergrad? But outside of a huge outlier, if you had good grades from a Big Ten equivalent type of school, they're judging on your performance in law school. So I view it as like, it was the playoffs now. Guess what? Everyone starts with a record of 0-0.
Yep.
They walked in the steps of Vanderbilt, and I was motivated to not be the last in the class. I was motivated to be a winner and to get good grades. And I wanted to prove that LSAT score was not defining me. And I was fortunate to have great professors and great friends and study groups I made along the way and give me, I think, competitive advantage to hustle and they discipline and process. And I was fortunate for great outcomes and get a job offer out of law school, which was one of my dream type of places to go after law school.
I was a dean of career services too. The dean of Vanderbilt Law School, when you were there, Kent Siverud, went to Wash U, and then he hired me to be his dean of career services. In the time I spent in career services, I got to know so many hiring partners. No one ever cared about the undergraduate school that the law school student went to. They didn't care about the undergraduate GPA. None of these hiring partners, Justin, none of them could name the top 20 law schools. Like I could, because this is my living. We should do a podcast where I try to rank all 190 something law schools in order and see how close I can go. But no hiring partner can do that because they think in terms of when they were a student.
I can't express this enough. When I was going into law school, there was a top 14 and it ended at Georgetown. And I knew it. And from when I was there, 15 was Texas, 16 was, I think it was USC, and 17 was Vanderbilt. And I knew it cold, and I felt like top 14 was better than number 70. I really, in my heart, felt like it was better. And I talked to lawyers who were 20 years older than me. They told me it didn't matter. No one cares. And if anyone out there is listening, it does not matter. It does not matter one bit. It doesn't matter number of law school or 190 or number 3. Yes, that does matter. If you're going to a school that's anywhere near the top 25 or top 30, you end up in the top 10% of your class, you will get a job that you really like. And so how I got the job at Kirkland Ellis was that there's one alumni at the time, Vanderbilt, at Kirkland Ellis at that point in time. I called him directly. I said, I have interviews at Mayor Brown and Winston Strawn and Sidley Austin in Chicago when I'm up there next week. Can I come by and meet you in person? And he said, yes. And so if I had anything to stress, 13 versus 14 versus 12, it just does not matter. Nobody cares. I think going to a part of the country that you think you may want to end up living in, that does matter, I think. If you said to me, you for sure want to live in Chicago, you got into Northwestern and to Penn, I would say strongly consider Northwestern, even though maybe a couple points ranked lower. It just doesn't matter. And guess what? When I was a lawyer practicing at Kirkland Ellis, I don't care where the guy from across the law firm across the table went to law school. It just doesn't matter. Some of the smartest lawyers I've ever met went to schools that were ranked more than median, way lower down. It does not matter. When you're 22 years old, look at the rankings, it matters. After that, it means nothing.
I can't fight this battle enough, and I try. One of the metrics last year for U.S. News and World Report rankings was seats, number of chairs in the library. Does that make a school any bit better? Two better? Is the 15th or the 14th ranked school two worse than the 13th because they have less chairs in their library? It's so arbitrary. Go to a great fit. Yes. This is the other thing that you didn't click on. I mean, you mentioned it. Yeah, the rankings matter a lot when you're 21 and there's all these bright lights in front of you. That's true. But the other thing is you went to places that not just law school, but the law firm. You reached out to people and you found fit.
Yes.
And that's why you're where you are today.
I called the guy at Kirkland and said, I want to be in Chicago. I want to be the private equity law firm. That's why I kind of called him and said that sort of thing. But I do believe there's tiers, though. If a tier touches another tier, then it's the same tier in my mind. I do think there's a difference between a top 5 school and a 40th ranked school as far as who comes on campus with an overlay of geography. I think if you're talking about Illinois, which is, I don't know what's ranked anymore, 30, that is a better fit to go to a school in Chicago than NYU. It's just the honest answer. I think there's more people who are Illinois alumni at Chicago law firms than NYU law students in Chicago. So there's some geography that plays into this, but go to a place you think you're going to be happy. If you also said to me, you had high confidence, you end up being in the top 10% of your class of going to Iowa versus being the bottom third of the class at somewhere else, go to Iowa. Be the top 10% of your class. For me personally, I hire people all the time. Literally, when I hire students from business school or from law school or from undergrad, if they can show to me they were the top 1% of their class, I'm very intrigued. I don't care where they went, whether it's a 30th ranked school or 4th ranked school, I don't care. someone who's won amongst their peer set in competition. That's what I want.
To begin with, I know you hire people all the time because someone messaged me on Reddit and they said, is the Justin you're referring to Justin Ishbia? Because he hired a friend of mine. So I do know that for a fact. I got a message. And I told him that story, how when I'd be like on a plane, I would land and I'd have like 5 texts from you. Hey, I know you're in Chicago. Can I take you to dinner? Yeah. How do you know I'm in Chicago? He thought that was a cool story. So for sure, these schools are blocked off in tiers. You're right. I think of my responsibility. I don't really have many clients anymore because our firm's 35 people. How many employees do you have?
Across all of our companies, 20,000. At Shore Capital, the investment firm itself, property, with 83 full-time team members in Chicago and national office.
So you can say this to the nth degree, but when you have even 35 people reporting to you, you don't really have much time to take on clients. But I'll take on a couple a year. And here's an example. I see my fiduciary responsibility to my clients is to give them lots of hard decisions. But some of my favorite hard decisions, and we had someone 2 years ago do this, is she picked Michigan over Harvard. She just liked her visit to Michigan better. That to me is the same. It's in the same chunk.
To me, it's the same chunk. I worked at Kirkland Ellis. I was involved on hiring teams. When I was there 20 years ago, we wanted people from all different schools. If you told me we could hire, when I was a summer associate, there were 60 in my class. If you told me you could get all 60 from Harvard, they just said, no way. They would have wanted that. You want breadth and diversity in your class, and go to a place that you have a reason to be there and you're excited about it. I do think Michigan is different than Podunk State University, wherever that is. But Michigan and Harvard, to me, from a law school perspective, are both top-notch grade law schools. And Michigan and Vanderbilt are the same, both top-notch great law schools. There is huge deltas from like number 150 and number 5. I get that. But choose a geography, choose a fit. Vanderbilt, as you know, has a program called the Law and Business Certificate Program.
That was brand new when you were there.
I was attracted to that. I wanted to go in business. And so that was part of it. I was able to take classes. I knew in the front end, I was able to take up to 8 classes in the business school. So modeling and financial analysis, I wanted that. So after I knew I wasn't going to top 5 school based on my LSAT score, I was like, I recalibrated, and Vanderbilt became my top choice. Partly because of that program, partly because I love Nashville, partly because I interacted with you personally. I felt like this is a place that I would enjoy my career. And it was a different part of life for me. It was 3 years, different part of the country. I didn't think I was end up living in the South for the long term. I would though now, how much I know about it. I loved it. But that being said, there's a pressure to look at rankings and look at certain data. And I get it. You want to go the best you possibly can. I'd encourage you to create a scorecard. The goal should be best fit for me, not best law school by somebody else's rankings.
We actually created a website. It's called My Rank by Spivey, where you can put in the metrics that matter to you and how much they weight, and then you can come up with your own scorecard. So we actually had that, myrankbyspivey.com. It's free.
It's brilliant because right on the score, no geography, alternate programs available to you. If you love music or if you love divinity, there's some places that have those options you can kind of cross do things into. So check out what's a fit for you. I'd also ask the career services offices, if you have options, you get into school A and school B, say you want to live in Chicago or want to live in Dallas, call up Michigan, call up Harvard and say, how many of your alumni from the class last year went to those locations? That's a big part of it because people want to recruit from their own. They want to go back to where they went to school and they want to recruit from their own backgrounds and they understand it better.
This is such great advice. What you're saying is things I've been saying for the last 20 years. You're just, I think, probably articulating them a little bit better than
I doubt that.
Any final thoughts for someone about to go to law school? I mean, you did very well at law school and you also enjoyed yourself.
I loved it. So just my take on it, looking back, I got great advice from people I knew were older than me. There's lots of paths. You can go to work for a judge as a clerk. You can go in a not-for-profit world. You can go to more a local law firm, or you can go to a national law firm. I personally went to a national law firm. I personally wanted to focus on private equity law. That's what I knew that I kind of wanted to do. But if I was talking to people who are considering, your first year, treat it like a job. If your friends, you're 22 years old, your friends are getting interviews at Bain or McKinsey, and they're going to Goldman Sachs or Bank of America for an investment banking job, guess what? When they're 22, that's where you cut your teeth. It's an industry in a world of apprenticeship. You take lots of bats. And your first year in law school, treat it like a job. I used to get up literally at 6 in the morning. I would work out. I would study before class. It was a job. And it mattered. I worked literally till 10 o'clock at night. I would say 4 of the days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then on Friday and Saturday, a little bit different, but I treated it as a job. There's a book that I read that I really liked, Planet Law School. I loved it. I read it a number of years ago. I thought it was by Atticus Falcon. I was reading about that in the blogs 20 years ago. Helped me a lot think about law school and preparation for it. It's a bear the first year. Second and third year were a breeze. I'm telling you, you learned the game. So buckle up for your first year because your grades from your first year in law school will determine who you interview with the summer before your second year. That summer, second year internships will determine where you go after law school. So that first year, I would say if I had to allocate weight of effort, I put 85% that first year. And I had such a great time. I met some of the best people, some of my best friends in the world, 4 or 5 guys who were in my wedding. Today, we still travel with those couples today, my wife and I. You don't know who's in your class. That's one of the things. Like our class is 200. You're thrown in with other 200, 199 people. Right. And that's a little bit of luck. That's a little bit of luck. But back to the culture and the atmosphere, you know what Vanderbilt's looking for versus what Illinois is looking for versus Iowa versus Michigan versus NYU. All are great. But figure out, look at the class, talk to career services offices. But if I had to go back and do it all over again, I would never pick somewhere different. I love my time at Vanderbilt. And the process of getting there was not what I planned before my senior year in college started. But looking back on it, it was awesome.
One final question. You're a very confident guy. It's probably one of the reasons why you've been so successful. Did you feel imposter syndrome your first couple of weeks at Vanderbilt? Did you feel like you didn't belong there? Everyone else must be better than you? Because most people do feel that, but I have a funny feeling.
I did not. I just felt like I think they're all smart people, but this about law school, there's no midterm exams. There's no mid-tests along the for writing class. But the other classes, like your first exam is December. I didn't know how to do good, bad, or medium until my grades came back January 15th of my first year. So you're going for a full 4 months. You know what you're doing right, wrong. You have no idea. Everyone there was smart. But guess what? Do you think when everyone goes to investment banks, the guys that are dumb or gals that are dumb, you think you go to consulting, your peers are dumb? It's a world of competition and talented people rise. And it's not just about how smart you are. It's about how hard you work. And my dad has a saying that I always subscribe to that he says, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I felt like you create your own luck. Coming to Nashville, meeting you, I worked hard. Some people would have flown to Nashville, got in the car and drove to Memphis. I said, I'm going to go spend an afternoon and meet with Mike. And it was lucky that it was you. It could have been somebody who was totally into, the symphony, which would not have been my cup of tea and we wouldn't have jived. But I worked hard. I followed up. And I think that stuff, you work hard, you're going to get lucky in life. Every single turn of the corner. But the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I really believe that. And give yourself more opportunities, more options, more shots on goals. And I think success will follow. My brother has a saying he says, money follows success. It's not about the money. Be successful. And Nick Saban is one of my favorite coaches of all time in sports. He may be a team 55-0. And he is in there talking about precision and the first step in the lineman and the tackle missed here. I think those I've seen who've been incredibly successful don't focus about the outcome. They focus on the process. Right. I can't promise you the outcome. I can promise you the process. And I encourage you, those who are thinking about law school, come up with a plan and a process. Stay true to your process. I'm very confident. You follow your process that's strategically thought through and deliberate, you'll have great outcomes.
Yeah, it's true in the application process. It's true in job searching in your careers. You're a shining example of someone who worked the process and the outcomes figured themselves out. I know you have 80,000 people to boss around, so I'm going to let you go. But Justin, it's always a pleasure. The next dinner's on me. I owe you like 600. And thank you for the time so much.
Mike, thank you for all your help over the years. You've been a great friend and counselor along the way. And thank you for taking a chance on me 20 years ago.
Thanks, Justin.